Paul Ryan. Mr. Speaker, thanks so much. First to London, how were you informed about it today, and is there any reason to increase security there at our own capital?
Well, hi, Dana. Nice to be with you. I was informed on it by my national security advisor this morning after the London attack happened. The U.S. Capitol is arguably the greatest terrorist target in the world, and so it is always under very, very, very vigilant security. So I'm sure that they're cognizant of this. They're upping their security posture and profile. But this is something that we here in the Capitol think about and prepare for every single day. So that's something. And by the way, I just got to say, just my sympathies out to these victims and to the police officer who was killed by this assailant. This just goes to show, Dana, that we are still at war with radical Islamic terror, if that's what this is. We're being told that it is being treated as a terrorist investigation, and that's what it looks like. And look, it just shows that we have to be vigilant about this in our society these days.
And Mr. Speaker, going forward in the next month, you're going to have some budget hearings, and one of those will be about increasing resources in order to continue to take the fight to the enemy.
That's right.
Is this just yet another reminder about why we have to reorient our priorities, if you're looking at it from a President Trump perspective, that this is the budget that he's asked for because this is what he thinks he needs? Do you think he'll meet much resistance when it comes to that?
No, I don't think he'll meet much resistance when it comes to that, because we all agree with that. And we ran on saying we need to rebuild our military. We need to give the assets that are required to our warfighters and to our intelligence and to our law enforcement agencies so that they can keep us safe. We are bringing offense to ISIS. The president is changing that policy in a very constructive, important way that we've been waiting for. And we want to make sure that we give the military the budget they need to do their job.
All right. And the other breaking news story today is that the House Intelligence Chairman, Devin Nunes, says that he has been legally brought new information that says that there might have been incidental collection that rounded up conversations over at Trump Tower during the transition. Let's take a listen to him and get your reaction.
From what I know right now, it looks like incidental collection. We don't know exactly how that was picked up, but we're trying to get to the bottom of it. I believe it was all done legally. I think it was all obtained legally. It appears most of this occurred, from what I've seen, in November, December, and January. So that should probably, during the transition, that's correct.
And Representative Nunes said that he had actually spoke to you and that he's on his way to actually brief the White House, which is interesting since they are actually the subject of the investigation.
Yeah, Devin, Chairman Nunes did brief me on this morning, so I just first learned of this a handful of hours ago. This is because we have an investigation in the Intelligence Committee into these things, and so this is one of the things that he uncovered in his investigation and felt it was important to bring it to light since he's learned of this recently.
All right, so maybe we'll find out later after he goes to the White House. Let's move on to the big story. So just 9 weeks into the administration and in terms of your speakership and this new term, you are bringing to the floor tomorrow night the House bill, the American Health Care Act. Just moments before we came to air, the Freedom Caucus, through Mark Meadows, congressman from North Carolina, said that the votes aren't there, that this bill won't pass. But what say you?
Well, I don't think anybody knows the answer to that. There's a claim that there's 24 votes against it. We're getting a lot of Freedom Caucus members to support this bill. We've been adding Freedom Caucus votes to this bill all week. Here's what's going on, Dana. We are in the fourth quarter of the House passing this bill, which is the fourth committee. Now that we're getting to the fourth committee of a four-committee process, that's when a lot of negotiations really intensify near the end of the process. And that's what this is. This is called legislating. And so there are people who want to get various provisions in the bill. But what's important for us is we have to broker compromises to make sure that we draft legislation that can actually pass. And one of the rules that we have to watch is the Senate rules that prevent a bill from being filibustered. And so we have to be very cognizant that we don't add a provision to the bill that jeopardizes it from being even voted on in the Senate that could make it easy for Chuck Schumer to filibuster it. And that's a frustrating rule for a lot of our members. And so they're frustrated that we have to sort of play by these Senate rules. But if we do pass a bill here that has these fatal provisions that are sort of poison pills that the Senate then can't even vote on it, what good is the effort? So that's why we're basically having the kinds of conversations and negotiations with our members. We are in the fourth of a four-committee process, and these are the kinds of talks that are going on. Some people negotiate in person, some people negotiate in the media. That's what legislating is all about, and that's the process we have here. We feel pretty good, though. We know we feel good at the end of the day here because members promised that we would repeal and replace this disastrous and collapsing law, and that is what we are intent on doing.
If you get to tomorrow night and you feel like you don't have the votes, will you postpone it?
Well, I'm not going to get into the hypotheticals. We're talking to our members and working toward the goal line here. We're adding votes by the day. We're not losing votes, we're adding votes, and we feel like we're getting really, really close. These members you just talked about were down at the White House just about an hour ago. We have a president and a vice president and a team that are leaning into this, working with these members, talking with people, helping broker compromises that are, quite frankly, very constructive, that improve the bill, that make good refinements to the bill to make it even better. We just want to make sure that we keep the consensus so that we can actually pass the bill, and that when we pass the bill here in the House, it can be brought up for a vote in the Senate and not filibustered. And so that's the key balance that we have to maintain while we go through this process.
When you wrote the bill, I'm assuming that there would be no support from the left. Okay, they were going to always.
Yes. I don't think the people who created Obamacare are going to be working with us to get rid of Obamacare.
Did you anticipate the strong pushback from the right? I mean, it seems like the seniors groups aren't happy, the veterans groups aren't happy. There are people who say it makes it more expensive for people who don't have insurance in order to get it, or that it basically gives tax cuts to the rich, and you're sort of that you're basically the reverse Robin Hood. How do you respond to that?
Well, I would simply say that Obamacare is a collapsing law, double-digit premiums this year, a projection of even higher premium increases next year, basically forced insurance monopolies. 5 states, 1 plan left, 1,000 counties, 1 insurer left. Insurers are pulling out of the marketplace, so the thing's collapsing. So people are trying to compare what we're doing with a law that is quickly collapsing, and it's really kind of a faulty comparison. And what we've long said is we need to repeal and replace this law with patient-centered health care to give people choices. Let people buy what they want to buy, not what the government forces them to buy. I know people on the left don't like that, but that's what we campaigned on. That's what we think will save the American healthcare system, having a patient-centered system with choice and competition, and not a government-coerced system that just literally is giving us skyrocketing premiums.
You've always been a free market kind of guy, so can you understand where some of the guys from the Freedom Caucus are coming from? And like, we got to go back to our districts and try to explain this, where they actually think that maybe it'd be better not to do anything right now than to send this one over to the Senate.
My own view on that is doing nothing means the collapse occurs and good people get hurt. Doing nothing means skyrocketing premiums coming up in 2017 and 2018. Doing nothing means more insurance companies pull out and people have nothing. So we just believe we have a moral obligation and a duty, now that we're the governing party, to step in front of that collapse. And by the way, replace it with good reforms that work. These reforms, whenever tested, have worked. So we really believe we're onto something good here. What's frustrating to all of us, Freedom Caucus members, myself, everybody in between in the House, is that we have to deal with these Senate rules as they are, and that's frustrating to us. Don't forget, Dana, when the Senate rammed Obamacare through, they did it with 60 votes.
Yeah.
So they didn't have any rules they had to work on. We don't have that ability because there's only 52 Republicans. So we have to use this reconciliation rule,
so the
which
answer
narrows
is
the
that
solution.
More Republicans should be elected to the Senate if you're a Republican.
That's right. Give us 60 votes and we can write any bill we want.
I have a last question for you, because you and President Trump have seemed to form a relationship that maybe neither of you anticipated, and you called him the other day a very good closer. I saw today that some members who had actually been on record saying they weren't going to support the bill, now they've said, okay, they're going to. Is that because he has put his shoulder behind this and you guys are in this together through tomorrow night?
Yeah, he's been bringing members down there in groups, turning votes around, talking to members, listening to their concerns, and closing the deal. He brought about 10 people down there and turned their votes around, and just basically explained how just valuable and important this is for the country. By the way, it's also important that we can do this so that we can get on to tax reform and getting economic growth. These things are related to one another. So the president has been a fantastic closer. He's been getting votes. This is, to me, it's really encouraging. I've been talking to members of Congress who've been here for many years who said this is like the first time I've ever been to the Oval Office. We've never seen this kind of level of presidential engagement and involvement with our members before. It's very constructive. It's very refreshing. The president and the vice president are rolling up their sleeves, getting involved. Look, governing's tough. And we are going from having been an opposition party for the last 10 years to having to become a governing party within 3 or 4 months. That's a challenge. Those are the growing pains we're going through here. This is part of the legislative process. It looks a little messy, but I think this is the kind of the system the founders envisioned. And so I actually enjoy the fact that we're having these kinds of conversations, that we're talking about Not whether we're going to fix people's problems, but how we're going to fix people's problems. And that's the kind of conversation that we should be having up here, and that's the one we are.
So my last question to you is, if the markets are concerned that there's maybe an inability to get this one done, or they're worried that tax reform won't get done, you wake up on Friday morning, regardless of what happened the night before, Thursday night with the vote, what is the next step for the House? Like, what is the next puzzle piece that you try to put together so you can get the agenda accomplished?
The challenge, the reason why people link this with tax reform is Obamacare. Our bill repeals $1 trillion in Obamacare taxes. And that makes, therefore, tax reform $1 trillion easier. If you don't repeal and replace Obamacare, then your tax reform efforts just became $1 trillion harder. To give you a sense of what that translates into tax reform, $1 trillion is about a 10 percentage point drop in business tax rates. So it's pretty significant. So either we do this, repeal and replace, and make tax reform easier, or if we did not do this, it would make tax reform about $1 trillion harder.
All right, Speaker of the House Paul Ryan, thank you very much. We'll be watching
Thank you, Daniel.
tomorrow night. All right, now back to Shepard Smith with continuing coverage of the London